Let's make a Christmas card out of some scrap bits of fabric that you've got hanging around the house. Hello everyone, I'm Caroline and welcome to my home on the hillside here in Wales. And I thought I wanted this Christmas use up some of my Christmas scraps to get some things made for Christmas. Obviously not Easter. So I've got together a few things for this particular craft. You don't have to use Christmas fabric. You can use Christmas coloured fabric. At the end of the day, Christmas has changed so much now that you could be using pinks. If you find the person you're sending this to loves pink or is making their Christmas theme this year pink or blue or brown or whatever, primitive colours, pick those colours. I'm going for some sort of traditional colours. I've got this stretchy, weird fabric here as well. It used to be sequined, but I think these are just selvages. Doesn't matter. I'm going to be needing something sparkly. That will be perfect. The first thing you're going to need is some hexies or hexagons. Now these measure, I think it's 1/2 inch. Yep, 1/2 inch on each side. Be careful here. People measure them differently. These are 1/2 inch from side to side on the edge. But if you go from point to point, then they are, oh dear, what's that? That's 3/4 inch. So just make sure you know where the measurements are coming from. Now, there are downloads all over the internet. If you want to cut out these, you can get yourself a stencil. I didn't have a stencil small enough, so I used a download from the internet. I couldn't recommend which one because I can't remember, but there are loads and loads of free downloads for this sort of thing. You can see I downloaded a sheet and then I coloured in on the sheet the pattern I wanted to make, just to see it was going to look okay. So I got some sort of badly coloured in blue. That's why they're blue, in case you're wondering. So the next thing to do is to cover yourself some hexies. Now you're going to need 10 hexies. And the top hexie, because we're going to make a Christmas tree, is going to be the star. So you want to cover that with something star-worthy, or you can cover it with something plain. If I show you this fabric here, this has got snowflakes on. So you could put a snowflake in the centre of it, or you could use a plain fabric, but you could embroider a little star on the top in yellow floss or white floss or whatever colour you're using, whatever will suit your tree. Covering these small hexies is very fiddly. I will tell you that. I cannot lie, it is not an easy job. Well, it's easy, but it's fiddly. So I'll show you how I do it. Now, normally when I'm covering a hexie, I will use 2 pins, but there is no way I can get 2 pins on here and make any sense of it. It'll just be all crumpled up. So I use 1 pin, and they won't fit on anyway, so I like to use a long pin. At least I can see where it is. Then I'm going to cut myself the shape of the hexie. Now, don't worry about it. Everybody says, well, not everybody, lots of people use 1/4 inch seams, which is the industry standard, I suppose you could call it. But with these, I like to give it a little bit more seam because it's so small and fiddly, it will drive you bananas unless you're a very patient, very accurate person, which, if you've been watching my channel for long, you know I'm not. So now I've got this. Ooh, there we go. It's a Christmas tree. Done. If only. So the next thing you need to do is get some basting thread. You don't want anything posh for this. You can use your scruffiest thread, anything that's a little bit dodgy. I've got this beige here. Now, this is very, very vintage. It's not sort of so old it will be antique, but it's very vintage and it's not the strongest in the world. I would never use this to sew a quilt because it would fall apart in no time. But it's fine for basting. I always give a little angular cut on the end of my thread before I thread it because my eyes are not brilliant and that seems the best way to do it. Or another alternative is I'm just looking for a needle in my, this is where I keep my pins and needles and things. And I've got an easy thread one, so I'm going to use that instead. And watch how easy this is if you've got trouble with your eyesight. Bing, it's threaded. Take some off. Little knot in the end, you really don't need a lot. You'd think I was sewing an elephant, the amount of thread I got there. You're only going to need a small bit. I would recommend you keep it small because otherwise you just get yourself all tangled. It's fiddly enough without getting your thread tangled. So now you're just going to be folding these edges over, making sure you don't put them too tight, but get a nice crisp, you can feel the edge of the paper in there. And there are loads of ways of doing this. I'll show you how I do it. So I go down from the top and up, not too far away because they're very small hexies. Then I fold the next angle over like that. And I like to go down first because that holds the little fold like that. And then back up again, not too far away. If at this point your pin is sticking out the end, then just pull it back a bit so it's not in your way. And then you've got to go right the way around. I love making hexies like this. I find it so relaxing. I've got a little tub, and wherever I go, I take my little tub, and I've got some paper pieces ready cut out for English paper piecing. And then, whoops, what's gone wrong there? Move that over there. Then wherever I am, even if I've only got 5 minutes, I can easily cover one hexie. I am making a collection of hexies. I don't know why. Well, I know why. I'm going to make a quilt, but I've got no design in mind yet. Right now, you can see there now the pin is getting in the way. But this is, if I take the pin out, you can see that's really firmly held in place now, so you don't have to panic. And then carry on with another side. You can see this really is fast, and it depends. If this is the first time you've done it, it'll be a little bit more fiddly, but it doesn't take much practice at all, and you'll be up and running at full speed. I'm finding it a little bit more difficult because I'm sort of working with my hands out to keep them in front of the camera. I always find that a bit fiddly. I like to settle down with it on my lap. And then I go back down, back up and down, just to make sure it's secure. Like that. Snip it off. And now you have to do that with 10 hexies. Now, you can either do them all the same, or you can do an assortment. And I'll show you what I've done. I've already made a start on this. As you can see, if I show you some of my fabrics, you can see I've already been cutting out some hexies because I thought it would just take hours and hours for you to watch me sew them all up. So now we can fast forward. Like Blue Peter, the children's program, used to say, here's one I made earlier. I've got this selection. I can hear you saying, Caroline, you really need to learn to count. That is not 10 hexies. I agree 100% that is not 10 hexies. And that's because I even made a start on putting them together. So if you're using 10, you can make this longer. But what I found was it was a bit stubby using hexies. If you made it any wider, you'd end up, it would be folding around the end of your Christmas card. So you can see I placed the hexie over the baubles on the one fabric. Where's that to? This one here. So it looks like there are baubles on the tree, and I got the stars from this one. Or snowflakes, not stars, are they? And the candy canes, which is one we just made. And this one, I decided rather than use the stars, I'd use the swirly bits, because that would look, oh, I don't know, a bit like tinsel or some sort of beading decoration, that sort of thing. So now I just need to build up. There's only another 2 rows to go. So I thought, well, I'll get the biggest part of it done out of the way. So I'm going to put a snowflake there, I think, because I've already got a star this side. Really, that would have been better there. Never mind, it's fine. And if I put that there, then no, I'm going to put this one there. Another one of those. There we go. I don't suppose it's the most random layout, but I'm no good at random, as you know. If you watch my channel, I can't do it. It always ends up somehow turning out uniform. And then when I use this, it was very fiddly. This is slinky and stretchy, so that took a while. But I thought they make a perfect star, and that's going to go on the top. So now we've just got to sew these together, and I'll show you how to do that. I've got one needle ready threaded, this one. Because you don't want to see me threading a needle. There are not enough hours in the day. Make that a little bit shorter. Another thing that there are lots of different ways of doing is joining your hexies. Now you can't just join them in rows and then join them up and down like this. I find that very fiddly trying to do lots of these little points in there. So I tend to just let it grow. I know where I'm going with the hexies, so I just see which seam seems to come up next. So this one is going in there. What I'm going to do now is fold that over, and I'm going to come in from this side. So I poke my needle under there. Oh, where am I? I'm off camera. So poke my needle through there. There's a knot in the end. Did I tell you there was a knot in the end? I may have forgotten. And then through the little point on that one. I'm trying zooming my camera in a little bit. I'm hoping it's not too blurry on a big screen, because it's easier to see a sewing video when you can get a little bit closer than I usually am. So I put a little knot in there, and now just take tiny, as small stitches as you can, as long as they're more than like one of the thread pieces in the warp or the weft, whichever way it's running, like that. Just a tiny bit. I think you're in focus. Now I've got myself all muddled up now. I usually sew from the other direction because I'm sure. So I'm going to go back this way, okay? Ignore me. You won't need to do that. Just pick your direction before you start. I'm like, they say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, and this is the way I always sew, top to bottom. Because if you're a bottom to top sewer, then sew it that way as well. Well, I'm doing this now, and I can hear there are people out and about. The sun is shining. There are a few clouds in the sky. Last night, the weather was terrible. We got a large window, which has got one of those tilt and turny things. You can either open it wide or you can just tilt it. And the wind was so strong last night. There was a huge gust. I thought the front door had blown open. And I went into the living room and it had blown the window. Even though the window was locked, it had blown it open. So that's quite, the lock mechanism and everything's quite damaged. So this afternoon now, my husband's job is to try and fix it. If he can't, I think we're going to have to try and claim on storm insurance for it. I've never had any window like that blow open before. When I looked at the weather forecast, they said that it was just going to be, I think it was 19 miles an hour winds. Those were not 19 mile an hour winds. So I'm not quite sure what was going on with the BBC weather, but they definitely got it wrong for my part of Wales yesterday. This is a problem. If you have your thread too long, it catches. But if you don't have it long enough, you keep having to rethread the needle. And because I hate threading the needle that much, I'd rather untangle it. So anyway, I digress. I was so busy talking about my window, I forgot to tell you that I turned a corner. But I suppose you saw me turning a corner. So turn your corner and then keep going. And you'll notice when I get to the end of sections, after fighting with my thread, here, I'm using a very fine thread for this. Well, not ultra fine. I don't know how you call threads. I got no idea. I just look and think, oh, that's a thick, that's a medium, that's a thin. Then when you get to the end there, I always just pull the needle out a little bit, you see, and then wrap it round twice, and then pull through. Oops, my loose tail is a little bit long. And it puts a knot in it. So if ever, I know you really don't need to do this on a Christmas card, but it's just a habit I'm in. So if ever it starts to unravel here, it'll only get that far. It won't keep unraveling. My nails are not looking very clean. I've been putting some feed in my pot plants and I've been sort of scrubbing up the surface and then putting in the feed, and I did think I'd wash my nails clean, but sorry if they're not. So we've got to this stage, and now I've got to put this one in. And can you see how easy this is? It is time consuming and slow, but it's slow stitching and relaxing, and I love that. Let's talk about some alternatives to this while I'm finishing this off. When it comes to basting, and basting is when you sew the fabric to the paper with the big stitches, you may not fancy doing that, and you can glue the paper to the fabric. Now, I haven't tried that yet because I don't want to gam up my sewing machine, and also that I don't want it to get my needle sticky, because I find if I put a plaster on my finger, I tried that to stop it sticking in the needle sticking in my finger, and it just the needle was just covered in sticky stuff. It was virtually impossible to sew with. So I've even forgotten. I've lost my thread. I've gone off wandering again. I'm terrible for going off wandering. That's right. You can glue the paper, and it doesn't matter because you're only just putting the needle through the very end piece there. So if you keep the glue to the centre, that will save you pinning, and then to save you basting, you just, let me stop and show you. When you got your fabric in place like that, run some glue around the edges, push it there, and for this I mean glue stick, like that, or you can get a special glue to do it, and that saves you doing that bit. Now, you can say, yeah, that's okay, but I really don't want to do all this sewing. to join them all together. Well, that's not a problem either. Now, I'd recommend something a bit stronger than a glue stick. I don't know if that would work. When I come to finishing, I've been stitching away there, not noticing what I'm doing. I slip underneath one of the folds there, and then I just do a little back stitch into there, little tiny stitch. And I just think that gives it an extra little bit of oomph and stickability. So it's not going to come undone. Again, I'm doing this as if I'm making a quilt. You're really not going to need anything that sturdy for a Christmas card, unless you have particularly rowdy children or grandchildren who are going to, I don't know, use it to play battles with. So now I've come to the top there, and I want to join this one on. So I'll always come to the inside and work out. If you go there and work in, it's much more difficult to keep in a straight line. So as I was saying, you can stick these hexies onto, you best to put a knot in the end. You can stick your hexies onto the card, and that takes out the sewing bit, well, completely, yeah, I would say completely. So if you really don't like sewing, bigger knot. I'm never going to get this hexie sewn on. Come on now, focus, Caroline, focus. Yeah, so if you are somebody who really hates sewing, but loves the look on this, then that's the easy way of doing it. I was going to bring a drink down for when I'm doing this, so I don't end up with a gravelly voice or coughing and driving you all mad, and I forgot. So apologies if my voice is starting to sound a bit dry. It is. So as I finish this off, let's talk about thread. For this, I'm using the finest thread I could. I don't mind stitches showing. I think it's lovely. It's all part of the ambiance of hand-stitched items. I think it's lovely, and you can see, I'm not saying you have big chunky stitches, but as you can see there, little tiny bits are showing through. I don't mind that. There is a way of doing these, which I've never done. And you do some sort of ladder stitch as you're going up and down, and I think, oh, that would double the sewing time for me. And then it would look too much like it was made on a machine or made in a factory. I want this to look handmade. So that wouldn't suit me. Same with any quilt. I like that handmade look about them. So I don't mind you seeing the stitches. But the best way to keep the stitches as unobvious as possible is to use a thin thread, preferably one that goes with the fabric. I should have used either green or red, but I didn't, because I've only got a thin in this colour. And also, the smaller the needle, the better. If you try sewing a hexie this size, then you're going to really struggle. And you're going to end up with bigger stitches, and the bigger stitches will show through even more. Finish this one off, so I do one stitch over the top, wrap it around twice, pull it through, and then, remember, I go underneath the seam. Oh, I should come closer, shouldn't I? Underneath the seam there, and then a little stitch there, and chop it off. So now we've only got the star to put on, and while we're putting the star on, we're going to talk about silk thread, because I'm not going to tell you about silk thread. I'm going to ask you about silk thread. I've heard that silk thread is much better for hiding your stitches. Now, I've never tried it. I tend to buy my thread from charity shops. I don't tend to spend a lot on my thread. You quite often get a bargain, so it seems a bit daft not to, but it's just you've got to be careful of how old the threads are, because they do get weak after many, many years. So I've never bought a silk thread. And I was wondering, is it worth buying silk thread? Do any of you use a silk thread for hand stitching? And does it really make a difference? Because I know, I looked on Amazon and I didn't find it that cheap. It was £5.50, I think it was, for a roll, and I can't remember now. Was it 300 meters at the most? It just didn't seem a lot. I like to buy my threads in bigger amounts. But if it really was going to make a difference, there possibly are some things that I would use it for. So, do you use it? Have you heard anything about it? Have you got any advice for me? What do you think I should do? Should I get some or not? So we're nearly at the end of sewing all the little hexies together. I'll just whip this up quickly. As you can see, when I wasn't on camera, my stitches were much smaller. I was watching TV and thoroughly enjoying myself, but now I'm going a little bit faster because I don't want you all to nod off. Unless you're watching to nod off. I like to watch some videos to nod off to sleep. At the end, and a stitch. Wrap it around. Oh, look, I'm getting it everywhere. Wrap it around, pull it through, and then under there, and there. I've probably shown you that so many times you'll never forget. And there's our Christmas tree. Now, you can see it is a bit fat, isn't it? I don't know how you would address that, but that is what I've ended up with. Now, I want to make a trunk for the tree, but I don't want to do that until I've checked out the background it's going on. So I've got two alternatives here. This is like a brocade, it's card, and you can put that on there. Now, if you're going to put this on here, you either glue, or I would suggest if you want to sew, use something like a pin or something like this to make the holes, because otherwise your needle will be blunt in no time and you're going to give yourself a very sore wrist. So if I was using that, let's chop a little bit of this off. Oh, because I'm zoomed in, you can see even less of what I'm doing. And I'm always terrible for wandering off camera. Because it's such a fat tree, I thought a fat trunk, fat and short, would be good. So if we put it there, you can see that doesn't really work for a trunk on the red. It's all, I think, is disappearing anyway. But if I was going to do that, I think I'd use this. Let's have a look. Chop a lump off. Now, this isn't accurate. It's just to have a look. Oh, now, that would be lovely as a pot. On something as bright and cheerful as... Move that scissors. Probably driving you mad. There, you could put that as a Christmas tree pot. Oh, no, I like that. That's something I hadn't thought of. Still, I think these reds are just merging in too much, so it doesn't really stand out. So I'd use a different type or different colour, or if you're doing a lighter tree, that would be fine. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to get a piece of felt. Now you can see that really stands out. And the next thing I need to do is get the Christmas card is going on and check the size of my felt. Yep. That's going to be perfect. So now I can do all my sewing onto felt or any fabric you've got rather than through the cardboard. It'll make life much easier. So now let's have a look. That can be going on there, like that. And then, here's my bit of gold. I want to use that as a pot. Oh, I don't know now. I was going to put it on a trunk, but I love it with a pot. Let's have a look at the trunk. Now I'm really torn. What would you go for? The problem I'm going to have with this is it's so flimsy. It's going to be really difficult to cut. And to sew, it's just going to be a fiddle and a faff. Let's have a look. If I trim it off a little bit more accurately, which is very difficult because this has got a life of its own, like that. Put that there. Put that coming over the top. Oh, it looks like a cupcake. Sorry, I'm clattering again. Doesn't that look like a silly cupcake with lots of frosting on the top? Not that I'm complaining. I love cupcakes with frosting. No, I'm going to go for a trunk. So I've got that, which I think is perhaps a little light. And somewhere around here, you know, piles of bits everywhere. I've got some dark brown. Nope, I can't find it anyway. So I'm just going to cut some off this piece of fabric here. Let's have a look. This is an old shirt I cut up. Let's give it a try. I think it's going to have to be long and thin. Well, that's different. It's definitely different. If I had a wider card, it would. I suppose if I was going that way, I could put another layer on. But this is what we've got, so this is what we're going to work with. So now to show you a different technique, I'm going to cut this to the size I want. Let's go this way. How about there? Let's try that. And don't worry, you can just alter it. Oh, I don't like this camera zoomed in. I keep forgetting to show you what I'm doing. Let's have a look for some widths. What do you reckon? I think thinner. there. So that's in that fabric, and I hope you're enjoying the process. I've had a few people saying, oh, I like watching the process and seeing why you do things, what your thoughts are. So I'm going for that. So sorry if you're thinking, get on with it. So that's the light one. I know it's not quite straight yet. And this is the dark one. I feel I should go for the dark, even though I'm not sure. So I'm going for the dark. So you've got the choice if you want to. Cut a piece of paper the size you want. Fold your fabric around. But I'm going to show you just a different technique. I wouldn't normally mix techniques on a card, but I'm going to. Just for today. So let's have a look. This is brown. I like to buy my sewing cottons like this. You can't always get exactly what you want, but usually you can get these like 50p in charity shops. And I'm going to just take 2 out of the 6 threads. Thread a needle. I'm hoping this isn't too thick. I think it may be. Let's give it a try. Pop a knot in the end. Well, before we do, just run my nail down it once or twice just to get it to untangle and run a little bit smoother. So now when I've decided, definitely, that's what I want, which I'm not sure of, I'll tell you what I will do is I'll fold this in half. And then that's half. Oh, there you are. That was pretty smack on halfway. Not like me at all. Then I'm going to put a big pin in like that. And I haven't cut the edges of this straight because I think this was best to stand it a little bit straighter. I think this makes it look more like a trunk. Now I'm going to go through the back. And I'm going to come in just a little bit. No, I'm definitely going to have to change that needle. It's too thick. It's great on the felt, but it won't go through the fabric. Right, I'm going to use my easy threading needle or I'll be here all day. Clear myself some space. And now come in from the edge a little bit because I don't mind if it frays. And you've got the option to actually fray it if you want to. And then do some little running stitches. And running stitches are just in and out, in and out. So if you are new to this, just go down. And then try to keep it in roughly a straight line. Come back up. Roughly the same distance with the gaps and the stitches, but that really doesn't matter if they're not. You can do several at a time when you get the hang of it. Now I'm going to take my pin out because that's not going anywhere and carry on. The top of this trunk is going to be hidden underneath the tree, so I'm not going to worry about that at all. I'm just going to come across a little bit. No, I think I'll go just around the edge. I was going to do a few stripes, but I'm just going to go around the edge because I quite like this spotty fabric. So now we just in, out, in, out. And if you want to, you can shake it all about. You may need to use a thimble for this. I don't know if you can hear it like a picky sound. That's the needle hitting my finger. I always end up with all little bits of skin hanging there, little tiny, like, it almost looks like dry skin is where I pricked myself with a needle so many times. And then across the bottom. You can do this with a contrasting thread if you want to. And then one more stitch to take it through to the back. Then I'm going to pick up that stitch there. Go around my needle twice. You can see I've got tons and tons of embroidery floss here that I didn't need. And we're done. And snip it off. It looks a bit ugly, but don't worry about that at all. Why is this not cutting? There. Oh dear. It's one of those days. Right, now before I go any further, I am going to take a little bit of the edges off here to fray it. I'll show you here. It's a matter of lifting some of the edges with your needle. Don't do too many because it'll just, you think, oh, this will save time. I'll do many more. It won't save time. You'll just end up with a terrible mess. Again, sorry if it's not focusing. There, and we'll fray some at the bottom as well. Why not? Same they charge. Try and cover, let's move that tree, because what can happen is the brightest thing in the shot will be the thing that the camera focuses on. It's got a life of its own. There we go. I just think that adds a little bit of character. And if you're going to do like a primitive look or country look, then that's brilliant. Now, how on earth did I end up with a loop there? We'll ignore that, okay? Because that's going to be under the tree. If at this point you're going to glue, then you won't have any basting stitches in here. I have, and I don't want to take them all out yet, because otherwise that's really fiddly. So I'm going to sew the bottom line on first, and then I'll work on taking them out. So I like a jaunty angle, but I don't know if it's going to work with this tree, is it? Looks a little bit like he's bowing, or I think if I had a few, then a jaunty angle would look really cool. But no, I'm going for straight. So put that where I want it to be. And then I'm going to pin the bottom. I put one in the middle, hold it roughly in place. And then I'll put some pins in down here. Now you've got several ways of doing this. You can use a really fine thread and tiny little stitches going over the top, or you can do what I'm going to do, which is to get some embroidery floss, and I'm going to use white. You know, this embroidery floss, I got this in the bottom of a bag of bits and pieces of cotton and needles and goodness knows what, and it's a bit on the grubby side, but I'm going to use it anyway. Oh, these are really stuck on. It is anchor, but it's like as if they glued the whole things on. There we go. So you can see this is it's a bit rusty where it's been next to pins, and there's lots of bits of brown cotton in it, which can make it look very suspect. But it's not. It is okay. It doesn't smell or anything. Don't panic. I'm not using something really gory. See the rest or bits of fluff. So again, I'm going to take 2. As you can see, there's always 6 on these. I'm just taking 2. If you do this too long, they'll knot when you pull them like this. If you start to get the point like this, you pull too much, then just give, the thick bottom bit a bit of a pull. It's a bit awkward, but you'll do it. And then they'll open up nicely. Again, I'm going to run my nail down just to get it a little bit smoother. And now we're just going to do a running stitch. Now this running stitch is not going to be as easy as it was on the trunk, because now we're going through the paper as well. Now you do have an option, I suppose. Thinking about it now, it's not what I usually do, but you could leave the paper in. I don't really see the point in taking the paper out, because it's, unless you're sending it abroad and you want to keep the weight down, because once I've taken the stitching out, then you're not even going to know it's there. So I may do that. So now all I'm doing is little tiny running stitches, but I can't in and out on this. It's just too thick. And it's your choice how big these stitches are. I'm keeping them small because the hexies are small, but you can put big stitches in. You can just do one huge stitch to the length of the side of the hexie. And you can even use a full thickness of thread, 6 of the threads, to make it really stand out. I'm trying to be a little bit more subtle with this one, because it's not sort of high-end looking, expensive, made by some wonderful stitching person, and it's not primitive. It's somewhere in the middle. It's just a bit of fun, something to show your friends or your family when you send them this card that you care and you want them to have something you made with love. Are you making Christmas cards this year? I know I've had several comments saying, oh, I'm going to try that. Let me know in the comments if you are going to be making Christmas cards. And did I inspire you to make those cards? Are you going to make any of the cards that I've made? I love sharing my ideas. Oh, this must be a thicker fabric, because I don't know if you can hear. It's not so bad there. Really difficult to get. Is it creaking? Must be that red fabric is much thicker. I know this green here was very thin. I'm finding as the years go by, I can tolerate thick fabric less and less. So I try to avoid it when I'm doing hand sewing. On the machine, it doesn't matter. But my first love is hand sewing. I try to limit things. When I know I really should give my thumbs a rest, I do a little bit of machine sewing then. Right, I'll get back to you when I get to the end of this row. Right, so I'm at the end of this row. Just turn the corner a little bit. So I can now take out, first of all, I'll take out the basting stitches on this bottom one here. Which way is it going? And if, like me, you get stuck there and you can't get rid of one of the threads, cut it as short as you can, stick your needle underneath and wiggle it and it'll pull it under. Now this piece of paper is going to come out fairly easily, like that. And now you can see that that one's a little bit puffier than the others. So if you're going to start taking your papers out, you're probably going to have to take them all out. And making sure, after you've taken the paper out, make sure that your edges are nice and straight, which they will be because we've handled them so much. The chances are you have finger pressed them with the heat of your fingers and they'll just go back to where they should have been when the papers were inside and you've got no bother. It could be a bit more fiddly if they did decide they weren't going to stay in place, which could be a problem if you're using a polyester blend. Try to use cotton because that holds its creases better. Which is why a lot of dresses are made out of polyester and shirts, because that way then you don't have to iron them. Cotton is notorious for holding creases, which is perfect when you're doing patchwork. So I'm just going to repeat the same thing every time I come to one I can take the stitching out of. I'm going to take the stitching out and then carry on moving further around. If you're leaving them in place, then it's going to be a lot quicker because you just stitch around and then walk away. So now I've gone right the way around the outside. Now one option you do have is to go around each individual hexie to give a more quilted look. But what I'm going to do, because I just don't have the hours in the day today, or this video is never going to get out, I'm just going to do that in this middle one. So rather than stop and start, I'm just going to do a few big stitches right through the back in, not through the front. Make sure you can't see them on the front, just to get to the middle. And then find out where I'm nearest to, about there. And then if you do it right the way around, it really will give it a little bit of a padded look. So it looks more like a quilt. But then again, there's nothing wrong with having it completely flat. This is going to add more time. I don't know how much, it depends on how fast you sew. But the one advantage with slow stitching when you're making a Christmas card for somebody, or a birthday card, or any gift really, is that you can spend the time thinking of the person who's going to receive the card. Now, you can remember happy memories and really appreciate them, which is a lovely thing to do. If you believe in the power of prayer, then it's a good time to thoughtfully pray and ask for good things for them, or whatever, blessings, however you approach prayer. It is surprising having this extra time. It's different if you're watching TV. You may be watching TV while doing it or something, but if you're doing it in the quiet, then you really can use that time wisely and keeping the person you're making this for in your mind. Sometimes it's so easy to take people for granted and the world whizzes by, time whizzes by, and you make this up as quickly as possible because you're trying to get as many Christmas cards made as you can. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I think it does have a value to spend the time working on something and really thinking about the recipient. I'm on the home stretch now. It really doesn't take that long. You could probably make one of these in an evening. You may make 2 if you're a really fast sewer. Whoops, I didn't notice because it's white on this, already gone round there. So now I'm just going to finish off on the back. Up to that little stitch there. Do another little knot there. This isn't going to go anywhere, you'll be fine. Don't worry about sealing it off foolproofly. So now we've got that. Next thing I want to do, now this is optional. If you're going to be using a different colour card, you can make yourself a card, cover it in paper, and then you will see the difference. You can use a different colour felt to the card. There's fluff everywhere on this. But what I'm going to do, to make this stand out a little bit, I'm going to use some of this red. Red is a nice Christmas colour. So for this, I'm only going through the felt. I'm going to leave this full thickness. I'm going to get out my thicker needle. Thread it up. Now I'm not going to tie a knot just yet. I'm going to come through the top there. Then I'm going to put a pin in there. I'm going to wrap this around the pin like that. No, I want a bit more than that, about that much, and wrap it around the pin. There we go. And now I'm just going to do that running stitch again, right the way round the edge of this piece of material. Now you can, if you want to, draw a line and go over that. If you've got one of these pens you can iron off or wash off. I use the one that irons. I don't know how well that'll work on felt, but I'm just going to go by eye. This is handmade. I'm not trying to hide the fact, so I'm just going to see how it goes. So I'm going to do a running stitch right the way around. You can see now the reason why I put that pin in is because otherwise you'll pull through like that and go, oh no, I've pulled the end of my thread through. What's going on here? You're not supposed to be round this side. Get back round that side. Oh, look at that. My pin fell out. That could have been nasty. Well, not that nasty really, is it? In the bigger scheme of things, your pin falling out and you having to do another couple of stitches where you've already done them isn't the end of the world. I'm overreacting. So you can see that's there. I'm just going to come into the corner now with a stitch. I think it looks... No, I'm going to... Yeah, I'd like that stitch to be on the top, even though it's going to be a bit close to the last one. And then off we go again. You can do these running stitches as small or as long as you like. You can do them in any colour you like. And I'll give you some more alternatives because I do like alternatives. You could use some binding, and you could bind the edges of this, like I bound the edge of my needle book there. So you can do that. Another thing that's pretty, it'll take you a bit longer because you have to allow drying time, is you can get some glue and paint the very edge of the felt, as long as it's a stiff enough felt. Most felts are. Oh, look at that, I've got a huge stitch there. Never mind. You can put some glue just on the very edges of the felt in perhaps, I don't know, 1/4 of an inch. No, 1/8 of an inch would probably be better. And then dip it in glitter. And you can have glitter all the way around the outside of your card. That would look pretty, but I don't think, oh, if you were doing a primitive one or a really old traditional one, it may not look so good. Oh, this felt is quite tough to get this needle through. I thought it'd go through nice and easy. Look how wonky that is. Be good to ignore that. I mean, I could turn the camera off, take it all back out, do it straight, and then say, look at this. But you know me. If I'm not enjoying it, what's the point? And if I have to undo it, I won't be enjoying it. And if I worry about it, I won't be enjoying it. So I don't worry. And there is no denying. Nobody can say, you sure that's handmade? The evidence is there for all to see, and I don't care. If you're a perfectionist, there's absolutely no harm in being perfect in your stitching. But if you're not, then there really is no necessity either. One thing I am noticing with this felt is I think it must be a synthetic felt, because normally I don't have any trouble getting a thicker needle through felt. This is really hard on my hands trying to get it through. So it's getting wobblier and wobblier all the time. You can see I'm really having to force it through sometimes. And it's not a completely blunt needle. It's got a bit of a point on the end, but it's really not happy going through this felt. So there we go. It's more like a zigzag path than a straight line. But you get the idea, and I'm sure you will do a lovely straight line on yours. Now, one alternative you've got, instead of leaving this in the rectangular shape that it's in, you could cut it into an oval. And then when you go around it with the red and put it on here, it would look even better. So that would look pretty, but oh, this is driving me bananas. That's not what I'm going to do today. Looking now, I want to make sure I'm central of the card. I'll pull that out, fold my card in half. Right, so that's the centre there. So I'm going to do a little down and up here. Try and be pretty central. I don't know if that's good. Well, I suppose I should have gone central of the star, really. But then the star should have been central of the card. It gets more complex all the time. So now I've taken the end of that thread off the needle. And I'm going to tie a little bow. It's very difficult because the threads keep trying to separate. Like that. And if you're worried that that'll come undone, then a little dab of glue will sort that out. And then you've got a little bow, or if you want to, if you've got some ribbon, and I just happen to have some here, I can do my favourite bow in the whole wide world, which is a 2-loop bow, because it's so simple. Oh, look, my ribbon's a little bit folded there. There we go, try that. Just make 2 loops and tie them in a knot. That through to there, and that around. Now what I think I'm going to do is take that off there. I'm going to undo the bow, stitch down and up over that knot so the other end is held in place. And then I'm going to get my 2-loop bow and I'm going to put it in place there. And I think that's neater. I like that. Very, very basic. Just going to... Is that the right place? I think it's a little bit all over the shop, isn't it? There. Then I come underneath there. Because I wasn't quite central. Put it on there. And I think the issue is my tree isn't central, is it? There we go. So we'll ignore that. And then you can either do a satin stitch right across the bow. I'm not going to. I'm just going to finish it off this side. Just do one of those twice. And then thread this through, poke that through to the back and finish that off as well. Now let's have a look. Pull my tails down and cut them off equally like that. Right, so now all that remains to do is to get a glue stick. Oh, now that's strange. Can you see that? I don't know where I can focus best to see that. All my glue sticks gone wet. I've never had that happen before. Oh, look. That's really weird. Oh, it seems to be working okay. It feels stickier than usual, actually. Ugh. Now just go all the way around. Not over your card. I should have moved the card out of the way. And then put it in place. Now I've got very sticky hands. Unfortunately, wet wipes are never far away from me when I'm crafting because I'm such a messy crafter. And I think that's straight. It possibly isn't. So there is a Christmas card. Now that did take a while, but I thought it would be nice to go right through the whole process. And I didn't show you every bit of it, but I showed you most of how I went along and my thought processes. Oops, there's a little bit of red sticking up there. So that glue is still so sticky. I'm going to poke that down there and it's gone. And there you got a card. So remember, you can make that into an oval shape. You can use glue for just about everything on here. You can fray the edges of things if you want to. And you've got yourself a handmade card. Well, I hope you've enjoyed watching. I hope I've inspired you to make a Christmas card. Let me know in the comments if I have. I'll see you all next time. But until then, don't forget, happy stitching and have fun. Bye.